Good morning. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and this is our 12-minute deep dive. A court in Isiolo has just handed down a staggering sentence. A man must pay a fine of 2,200,000 shillings or face 6 years in prison. His crime? Cultivating cannabis. This single case opens a window into a much larger, more complex national conversation about law, agriculture, economics, and justice in rural Kenya. Today, we're going to unpack this story from every angle. We'll look at the legal framework, the economic realities of Isiolo County, the global context of cannabis policy, and the human cost of such severe penalties. We'll speak with legal experts, agricultural economists, and community advocates to understand what this case really means for Kenya. Let's begin with the facts of the case itself. According to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, John Mburugu was convicted at the Isiolo Law Courts. The prosecution presented evidence that he was cultivating cannabis plants on his land. The court found him guilty under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Control Act. The sentence, a fine of 2,200,000 shillings or 6 years imprisonment in default. For context, the average annual income in Isiolo County is estimated to be around 180,000 shillings. That means this fine represents over 12 years of income for an average resident. It is, by any measure, a crushing financial penalty. Now, let's understand where this happened. Isiolo is a town of approximately 78,250 people. It's geographically considered the center of Kenya, lying 285 kilometers north of Nairobi. The population is diverse with Somali, Borana, and Ameru communities, as well as Turkana and Samburu minorities. The town grew around military camps, and much of its economy is tied to that presence. It's a semi-arid region where agriculture is challenging. The climate is harsh, water is scarce, and viable cash crops are limited. This is the backdrop against which John Mburugu was trying to cultivate anything on his land. To understand the legal weight of this sentence, we need to examine the law. The Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Control Act of 1994 is the primary legislation. It classifies cannabis as a prohibited plant. Cultivation, possession, or trafficking carries severe penalties. For cultivation, the law prescribes a fine not exceeding 1 million shillings or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years, or both. So the 2.2 million shilling fine exceeds the statutory maximum for the fine component. This suggests the court used its discretion to impose a harsh penalty, possibly viewing this as a serious case warranting a deterrent sentence. Legal analyst Miriam Wanjiku joins us. Miriam, is a fine of this magnitude typical for a first-time cultivation offense in a rural area? Miriam Wanjiku, thank you for having me. In short, no, it is not typical. While the law allows for stiff penalties, sentencing should be proportionate. Courts often consider the scale of cultivation. Was this a small personal plot or a large commercial operation? The defendant's personal circumstances, and whether there was intent to traffic. From the public statement, we don't have those details. But a fine of 2.2 million shillings, against the backdrop of regional poverty, is exceptionally severe. It raises questions about judicial discretion and the principle of a punishment fitting the crime. The economic reality of Isiolo cannot be divorced from this case. Let's look at some numbers. Isiolo County's poverty rate stands at approximately 62%. Unemployment, especially among the youth, is estimated at over 40%. The main economic activities are pastoralism, small-scale trade, and some tourism linked to nearby conservancies. The agricultural potential is limited by climate. The average landholding for a small-scale farmer is about 2 acres. On that land, traditional crops like maize, beans, or sorghum might yield a gross income of perhaps 30 to 50,000 shillings per year, if the rains are good. Now, contrast that with the potential market value of what John Mburugu was growing. While illegal, the economics are stark. A single mature cannabis plant, in the illicit market, can have a value ranging from 5,000 to 15,000 shillings. A small plot of 20 plants could theoretically generate more than a year's income from legal crops. This is the brutal calculus that drives people toward illicit activities, desperation. We must also place this within a global and regional context. The world's approach to cannabis is changing rapidly. Countries like Canada, Uruguay, and 21 states in the USA have legalized recreational use. Many more, including Germany, Thailand, and South Africa, have decriminalized possession or legalized medical use. In Africa, the landscape is mixed. Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and Malawi have established frameworks for medicinal or industrial hemp cultivation. Zambia and Ghana are exploring similar pathways. Rwanda recently announced a pilot project for medical cannabis. The common thread in these policy shifts is a move away from treating cannabis as solely a criminal issue toward regulating it as an agricultural and economic one. Proponents argue it can create jobs, generate tax revenue, and provide farmers with a high-value, drought-resistant crop. Critics, including many in Kenya's government, warn of public health risks and social decay. So, what is Kenya's official stance? The government position remains firmly prohibitionist. However, there have been stirrings of debate. In 2021, a bill was introduced in Parliament to legalize bang for medicinal and industrial use. It did not pass. The current administration under President William Ruto has not signaled any shift in policy. The focus remains on law enforcement. This creates a tension. While the law is clear, the economic pressures in counties like Isiolo are pushing people toward this black market crop. The state's response, as seen in this case, is to come down with maximum force. But does this approach work? Data from other nations suggests that harsh penalties do little to reduce cultivation or use. They simply criminalize poverty and fill prisons. Let's consider the human and social cost. If John Burugu cannot pay the 2.2 million shilling fine, he faces 6 years in Kamiti or another maximum security prison. The annual cost to incarcerate one person in Kenya is roughly 150,000 shillings. 6 years would cost the taxpayer 900,000 shillings. Meanwhile, his family, likely dependent on his labor or income, is plunged deeper into poverty. Children may be pulled from school. The cycle of deprivation continues. Furthermore, such sentences can breed resentment toward the state, particularly in marginalized regions that feel underserved by development. Isiolo, while central geographically, is often peripheral in national economic planning. Community advocate David Lemyan speaks to us from Isiolo. David, what is the local reaction to this sentence? David Lemyan, people here are shocked. They know the law, but they also know the struggle. To many, 2.2 million is an unimaginable sum. It feels less like justice and more like a death sentence for a family's future. There is a feeling that big-time traffickers often evade capture, while the small farmer bears the full brunt. What people need are alternatives, viable, legal crops that can thrive here, and support to market them. Without that, the temptation will remain, and the courts will keep handing down these devastating penalties. This case also intersects with other pressing national issues. Look at the ongoing scandal of Kenyans being trafficked to fight in Russia's war against Ukraine. Just this week, a WhatsApp message allegedly sent by a suspect, Festus Arasa Amwamba, ignited a legal storm in court. Young Kenyans are being lured into deadly conflict abroad because of a lack of economic opportunity at home. The root cause is the same: desperate poverty and few legal avenues for meaningful income. Similarly, consider public health challenges. Our third source today, though about Malawi, highlights how misinformation can hamper vital efforts like polio vaccination. In Kenya, misinformation about crop alternatives or the realities of the cannabis trade can also flourish when communities feel abandoned by official channels. The state's narrative of just say no clashes with the daily reality of how do I eat? So where do we go from here? Several paths are possible. Path 1, maintain the status quo. Continue strict enforcement and severe penalties. The likely outcome: more cases like John Burugu's, continued growth of the illicit market, and deepening alienation in regions like Isiolo. Path 2, explore decriminalization of cultivation for personal use. This would reduce the burden on courts and prisons, but wouldn't address the economic driver. Path 3, a regulated pilot program for industrial or medicinal hemp in selected counties, including arid ones like Isiolo. This would require amending the law, establishing a regulatory body, and providing training and licenses to farmers. It's a complex path, but one that could turn a black market problem into a taxable, job-creating industry. The potential economic impact is significant. A 2023 study by the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, though not publicly endorsing legalization, estimated that a regulated cannabis industry could generate up to 50 billion shillings in annual revenue and create over 100,000 jobs within 5 years. Of course, this must be balanced with robust public health campaigns and strict controls to prevent misuse. The debate is not about promoting drug use. It's about recognizing a failed policy and seeking smarter, more humane solutions. As we conclude, let's return to John Burugu. His case is a single data point in a national spreadsheet of crime and punishment, but it tells a much bigger story about inequality, economic policy, and the distance between law books and lived reality. A 2.2 million shilling fine in Isiolo is not just a legal judgment, it's an economic earthquake for one family and a symbol of a system struggling to address its root causes. The question for policymakers is this: do we continue to invest in punishment, or do we begin the harder work of creating opportunity? That's all for our deep dive today. Thank you for watching. We want to hear from you. What's your take on cannabis policy in Kenya? Should the law be reformed, or is strict prohibition the right path? Comment below. For Kenya News Update Today, I'm your host. Subscribe to Kenya News Update Today.